In the heart of the historical center of Rome, not far from the Vatican, is the Church of San Luigi dei Francesi. In a side chapel of this church, there can be found 3 masterpieces by an artist who will permanently change art. The painter who did the canvas was commissioned to do them for the Jubilee year of 1600, when 300,000 pilgrims would come to Rome. Many of them passed by that church, since at that time San Luigi dei Francesi was on the pilgrim path to the grave of the Apostle St. Peter. The church was finished in 1589 and consecrated by Cardinal François de Joyeuse, the Archbishop of Toulouse. San Luigi dei Francesi is the national church of the French people in Rome, consecrated to St. Louis IX, the king who had brought the crown of thorns to Europe.
The church is visited frequently, not only by the French people who live in Rome, but also by the pilgrims who come to Rome and visit the church every Sunday. The church is very welcoming to everyone.
The most famous chapel in the church is the Contarelli Chapel. The French Cardinal Contarelli wanted to consecrate this side chapel to his titular saint, to the Apostle St. Matthew. In his testament, he demanded therefore that the chapel should be decorated with paintings, which show the most important events in St. Matthew's life. His vocation, the writing of the Gospel, and the martyrdom of the Apostle. The commission was given to a young and unknown artist from North Italy who would become soon after one of the world's greatest and most famous painters, Michelangelo Merisi de Caravaggio.
C'est un homme, un génie de la peinture.
He is a genius of a painter. He was born in 1571 and painted these paintings around 1600 when he was only 29 years old. It was these paintings here which made him famous.
Ce sont les toiles ici qui l'ont rendu célèbre.
The painting of the Vocation of St. Matthew, Caravaggio had been inspired to follow the passage from the Bible where it says, "As Jesus went on from there, he saw a man named Matthew sitting at the tax collector's booth. 'Follow me,' he told him, and Matthew got up and followed him." At an unknown time at night, a group of men are sitting at a table. We are in the Rome of the 16th century. All persons are wearing fine cloths in the style of that time. On the table, various items are found: money bags, coins, a pen, and an accounting book, clearly indicating that business is taking place here.
Ce n'est pas a priori une toile religieuse.
It is theoretically not a religious painting. Indeed, it is a bank.
En fait, c'est une banque.
If nowadays a painter wanted to make the same effect, he would paint a banker in a suit behind a computer and the cash machine on the table.
En costume contemporain, avec son ordinateur et le caissier au bout de la table.
The 5 people around the table are dressed like one would dress in the 16th century. Therefore, the visitor at that time could easily identify himself with the people in the painting. They're very much like him, not famous historical people.
Et non pas à l'antique.
Prior to Caravaggio, art would have been very idealistic. It's with Caravaggio that we get this introduction of realism into religious painting. Caravaggio is going to try to show how the sacred is present even in the profane, in the day-to-day life.
The lighting of the situation is gloomy, dark, and the environment seedy. Men motivated only by money, in the company of other men who profit by money grubbing and moral ambivalence. All of a sudden, 2 men show up. They have bare feet and are dressed in humble garb. Their clothing doesn't fit the age of the 16th century, nor does it fit the passing styles or worldliness of other men. They come from another time. This is Jesus and Peter. With them, a tender ray of light enters from an unknown source too.
Mais surtout, la lumière est importante.
The light is especially important. The play of light and shadow. Often the light is a metaphor for grace. In the painting of The Calling of St. Matthew, we see that the light is not entering through the windows, but with and over Christ himself.
Light with Caravaggio has a very spiritual meaning. He's not just presenting us with natural light, he's presenting us with a supernatural light. It's light which illuminates the mind. It's light which gives us faith. And grace perfects human nature. So we have Christ bringing to man light, bringing to man grace. It's Christ who will perfect human nature.
This light, making a strong diagonal descent, falls on St. Matthew's eyes. This is the natural lighting for the painting, but is symbolic of the spiritual light that illuminates St. Matthew from the darkness, from his money-obsessed existence. He has eyes to see, and with them he sees Christ. From this privileged place at the table, he points humbly to himself. This is the moment recorded in the Gospel where Christ says, "Follow me." 2 simple words which transform Matthew's existence, where Matthew, with astonished humility, will rise his eyes and just a moment later raise himself to a new vocation.
Le pape François aime beaucoup cette toile et il me l'a dit personnellement.
Pope Francis loves this painting very much. He told me personally, this painting is connected to his own vocation. He told me that he had heard his own calling on the feast of St. Matthew.
À Rome, il venait prier.
When he came to Rome as a bishop or cardinal, he came often to pray before the painting. He usually stayed in the Casa del Clero, only 50 meters away from this church.
Logé à la Casa del Clero, qui est juste à côté, ici à 50 mètres.
It was the first thing he told me. Oh, I love very much this painting. He even was inspired for his bishop's motto from the scene from The Calling of St. Matthew. Miserando atque eligendo, which means, with mercy on the lowly, even with electing them. God, electing and forgiving him, made an apostle out of him.
Choisi ou élu et pardonné.
This painting, therefore, has great meaning for Pope Francis.
Grazie. Très souvent ici, des groupes de jeunes passent.
Very often youth groups come to see the paintings, and I've never seen a group that would not have identified themselves very quickly with the two boys in the painting. Ah, that's us!
Je pense que ce sont vraiment des jeunes.
I think these are really young people. That means they are available. Both of them see. They have seen that something is happening. They are open. Somebody has only to explain to them who these men are, what they're talking about, what they want. They have seen.
C'est-à-dire, ils ont vu qu'il se passait quelque chose. Alors, les deux personnages du bout, ce sont deux banquiers.
The two people on the left are bankers. One of them is young, the other one old. The young one is sad. He is crooked like that.
Et le vieux, il regarde au-dessous.
And the old oversees everything as though he would say, "You have to count carefully. Not a single piece of money may be lost."
Et en fait, ils verront pas le Christ passer.
And indeed, they have no eyes for Christ. Their universe is money. They're closed. They are enclosed in this universe of money, and they don't see Christ, who is passing.
Ils sont enfermés dans cet univers, ils verront pas le Christ qui passe.
The religious dimension of the composition is accentuated with an interesting detail: Christ's hand. Christ's hand is familiar. It's an image the viewer has almost certainly seen, and here brought to mind an iconic centerpiece from a painting by Michelangelo about 70 years earlier. It is the hand from the creation of Adam. Caravaggio references the moment in the Sistine Chapel where God gives life to Adam with their hands outstretched to one another.
L'idée théologique est très juste, c'est-à-dire
The theological idea behind this detail is very orthodox. It means if Matthew wants, he can be recreated. He can be a new creation and change his status.
c'est trop violent, mais que Matthieu est un personnage tout à
We can say that Matthew was a wretched person.
haïssable.
He was excluded from society. He was a collaborator with the oppressor, and he made money on the back of people with tolls. The Pharisee said to Jesus, "But how can you eat with such people?" Yes, but if Matthew wants, if he follows Jesus, he can become Saint Matthew. He can become Saint Matthew the evangelist. And he can become Saint Matthew the apostle. He will be a new creation. He changes his dignity.
Saint Matthieu. Ça va être Matthieu l'évangéliste, ça va être l'apôtre Saint Matthieu. Il est recréé.
Christ is the new Adam, the Redeemer who comes to share a gift of redeemed humanity to all who follow him, with the sigh of redemption foreshadowed in the image of the cross that we see made by the window pane behind him. St. Peter too makes with Matthew the same gesture of new vocation underneath the image of the cross.
Ce qui est intéressant
What is interesting in the figure of St. Peter is that he represents the church. It is the church. St. Peter, the church, follows Christ. He supports and does his commands. He does what Christ wants him to do, and he himself gives a sign.
Jesus and Peter come from another time. They are on a spiritual road leading to the crucifixion of the sinful flesh, the cost of redemption. From this we can see as well what it is that Caravaggio added to the history of art. He developed a language for allowing the spiritual to remain invisible, for showing what we see with our natural eyes, the world as it is known to us, but which is not sufficient without the eyes of faith to recognize God's activity. Eyes which, when illuminated by grace, see how God can work in the world as it is, with all of its corruption, sin, violence, and darkness, showing that redemption can walk into any dark corner of the world, and that grace freely given changes those who have eyes to see and ears to hear.
Mais ce moment ici sur la toile est un moment qui est suspendu.
The moment shown in this painting is suspended. The action is not yet finished. What is St. Matthew going to do now? This is what reminds all of us of our own decision. Christ is calling. God calls. And now what do we do? Are we answering the call? Or do we return to our old activities?
Où on retourne à nos activités.